Welcome to the Cherish and Conquer podcast, the show dedicated to celebrating female entrepreneurs' strength, resilience, and innovation. Be inspired by stories of women and what they cherish to help them conquer against all odds. Every other week, you will learn from remarkable women on how they navigate challenges, uphold their values, and create sustainable success. And now, here's your host, Jim Rembach.
Hello, and welcome to the Cherish and Conquer podcast. I'm looking forward to the discussion we're going to have today because Mary Lippitt has a breadth and wealth of experience in a lot of different areas, and also is going to share some research in regards to females and work and entrepreneurship, and we're looking forward to discussing that. And then she's also going to talk about her journey because, she's one of those people. I first met her and interviewed her on the Fast Leader Show podcast. And at the time, we were talking about her book, Situational Mindsets, Targeting What Matters When It Matters. And the wealth of knowledge that she shared within that interview was immense. So I'm just really delighted to have her here today. Mary, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me back. I look forward to another opportunity to chat with you.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so now before we get into talking about your journey, if you could please share with how you're actually making a difference in people's lives today with the work that you're doing.
Well, I think that the work that a lot of people experience has around conflict and disagreements. And what I'm offering people is a new way to look at different perspectives and find a way to bridge those differences. While taking a look at personality is great, the reality is that the differences usually stem from different goals and an assessment that has been made internally about what is most important to happen right now at this moment in time. So if I talk to somebody about wanting to have an increased budget about customer outreach, and somebody else is focusing on the fact that we're having a quality problem, we could argue for a long time whether extra resources should be allocated to customers outreach or quality improvement. And instead of having that attributed to someone's personality or someone's motivation, what I get people to do is to understand that there are different perspectives on how they've read the reality around them, and then have a discussion about how they see reality, how I see reality, and then we can have a discussion about, what is most important at this moment in time. I should say quality is important for the next 6 months, but that doesn't mean that the doors to customer outreach or customer service is forever doomed. So it's a way to have a discussion around more of the facts of the situation. And again, different people see different facts and prioritize them differently. And those are discussions that we can have openly. And, when we have an open mind and are willing to listen to another person's perspective, basically that opens their mind. So I'm offering a different way of having the discussion and setting goals and priorities that sidesteps this assumption that someone else has maybe an agenda or something. I encourage people to look at the realities, discuss the realities, and then jointly bridge and find solutions.
Well, as you're talking, I just ran through my head so many different scenarios, even just a conversation I had with one of my kids just the other day where I asked them to do something and they didn't complete it and gave me all these excuses about why they didn't complete it. And then, this person is also looking for a summer job because they're in school. And I said, do you think you can do that at work? Right. And the reply back to me was, you should appreciate the fact that I got done what I got done. I said, but I don't. And if they were arguing the point that I should do that, and I'm like, look, my perspective is that the job needed to be completed. I needed the final result. Mm-hmm. That's what an employer would expect. I said, however, you want me to appreciate the fact that you just made an attempt. And that's just unfortunately not going to work. And so you have your perspective and I have my perspective. Why can't we just leave it at that? And for the first time ever, he said, okay.
Yeah. And again, I think that it was, I think we use the word miscommunication too liberally, because I think it really isn't necessarily miscommunication. It's the fact that we're talking past each other. And what I'm trying to do is to bring some of the mindset expectations, the desired outcomes. I mean, let's use your example, from your son's point of view, he'd done a lot. He started what you asked him to do. And your goal was not just for him to start, but to complete. And again, I think that kind of openness can reduce defensiveness, argumentation. And it's interesting to me to see that in our school systems, we teach debate. We don't really teach listening. We don't really teach probing for another person's perspective. And I think that has caused us to assume that communication really is mostly debate or arguing or some kind of defensive maneuver or some extrapolation of some data to, quote, justify my position, when, as your example shows, it just needs to say, what were your expectations? What's your mindset? And then we can go from there.
And I think there's also the other factors that start to come into play is, existing stress and pressure. Because while I may be willing to listen, I may be, open-minded to other people's perspectives. I got a deadline. I got to get this done. This has to be accomplished. This should have been done 3 months ago. Oh, and oftentimes that stuff happens. Yes. And so I think there was one piece of research that I found that said something to the effect that our IQ drops about 10% when we've got to go to the bathroom, because that's all we're thinking about.
Yeah, I do think that we get focused on something. And just from my perspective, I have wanted somebody to do something, and I had a timeline in my mind. And frankly, the timeline was to serve me. I wanted to be able to cross it off the to-do list and say, that's done. And the other person was juggling multiple factors I had no knowledge of, which made my request unrealistic. So I think we need to be able to express more of our expectations and our sense of priority, and then listen to theirs. Actually, of course, the best way is to listen first and then express ourselves. But sometimes I don't follow that advice.
Want more insights from female entrepreneurs? Get complimentary access to Marina's Army for additional tips, tools, and tactics from this episode. Just go to Marina.ai and click Community for access. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
Well, but I think you brought up what is a very important practice. It's that we inquire, we probe, we ask, the questions to gain the perspective. And then, like you said, it's like, well, what I would expect, and you share your aspect of it, because that, to me, I think going back to the things as far as what we're trained with, and then social media just magnifies it. We want to get our point across. And in business, we've even conditioned that as well. It's like, you have to sell the idea and get buy-in. It's like, and all of those things can be counterproductive.
Yes. And I think, again, if we go back to the fact that we've been taught more debate, while the other person is talking, instead of my fully listening to that person, I am spending some of my mental energy coming up with a retort or a response. And so, again, I think that we frequently don't listen as well as we should be listening, whether it's a nuance, whether it's some body language that could help us. If I'm spending my energy looking for my next comment, I'm going to miss all those.
Okay, so now you also said some information was available through some research that you had conducted. If you could share that a little bit.
Yes, I have data on 6,000 leaders. And what I was asking them to do was to tell me what they are prioritizing in terms of a business goal at this point in time. And I had identified and given them a choice of 6 different goals. Should we be first focusing on new products, innovation, creativity? That's one. Second, should we focus on the customer? Third, should we look at our internal systems, our structure, our reporting relationships? Fourth, should we look at profitability and quality? 5, should we be focusing on people? And 6, should we be preparing for the future? And what was interesting was to see that the breakdown, and I'm going to just focus on the executives that took this study, was that all of the female executives were focusing on the external issues, innovation, customers, and the future. And the males at the same time were looking at profitability and quality and risk, some kind of reassessment of organizational flow. And so it's interesting to me to see that the women were most focused externally and, again, more change-oriented than the male executives were. And I had the opportunity to speak to a group of women at Harvard that was in a women's leadership program. And somebody just spoke up because we were having a dialogue about these 6 business goal orientations. And she said, I am going to look at innovation because if I can come up with a new idea, I can become the leader of that group and grow the group. It will be easier for me to grow a new segment of the business than to try to climb the ladder within the existing businesses. So I think that women have either consciously or unconsciously recognized that if they could develop something new and have a new niche, they could maybe start off with a small project and grow it into a sizable kind of domain, offering a new product or service. And I do think that can create a disconnect if the organization right now, you say, is worried about cost reductions or something like that. People might feel that someone is not, quote, on board, unquote, with where the organization's going, and therefore may overlook some talent just because of different priorities or focal points that the business should be following at this point in time. So I found that split interesting. And I think that many women started in staff positions, again, which meant that they weren't as involved in some of the quality, the cost cutting, the issue of productivity, those kinds of areas that are very internally focused. And I think that many organizations have recognized that women tend to be more in the staff functions and actually help them move into line functions. Again, so I think it broadens out their perspective, and it shows that they have a lot more talent than might have been in my historical resume. And I think that awareness doesn't have to happen with a reassignment to line functions. I think that women are very capable of being very detail oriented. I think that if you look at their total life experience, they've handled a lot of details extremely well. It's the question of understanding and being able to read where the organization is going and then be able to show how you can contribute to that current goal. Goals change all the time. I used to laugh because organizations were always in the process of either decentralizing and spreading out or centralizing. So, if you're not in sync with their current initiatives, you may not be seen for all the talent you possess.
For me, when you are talking about your observations and interpretations of the data, I also wonder, though, if you look at focusing in and honing in on executive level folks and you talk about the origins of where they came from, a lot of the people who are in those executive roles are from sales, from legal, from, parts of the business where, the control and constraint and all of those elements of protection, come from. And you also look at basically as far as, anatomy, the way that women can multitask more than men can. I think there's more to me. I would love to explore, some of those other interpretations. And then you even start getting into the whole number mix, right? If you're grossly outnumbered, it's a difficult battle, and taking an alternative path, is the much easier thing to do. Even so my wife, we've been married for over 30 years and she's a CPA, and for 30 plus years, I've heard nothing about the boys club in accounting. You hear about the boys club in banking and finance. You hear about in utilities, you keep hearing about the boys club, the boys club, the boys club. And is this the legacy that it's just going to take a while in order for us to get rid of, so that women don't feel that, hey, the only way that I can move up is that I need to move sideways to go to an innovative route?
Well, I hope not. But I do think, first of all, the boys club exists. I was working within an organization, and the top people seemed to play poker on Friday night, and I was not invited. But I think that what I did to become visible was being able to read up the chain of command. I think one of the pieces of advice I would give to women is that you're too focused on your current job and the job you left, because if you got promoted to a manager, you're probably working to help your supervisors. But you really need to start putting your hand in the job above you. And I think that when you read that set of priorities and goals, I think that you can make suggestions and offer solutions that had been missing. So I do encourage women to keep their focus on that job above them, or two levels above them, and find out, what's happening. To me, the sequence that you talked, I've worked in an organization where it was founded by an engineer, so it was very, very detailed. The next president of the organization was sales, so they grew sales. And then the next president of the organization was finance. And sometimes, you can see it clearly because, the person had been chief financial officer, then becomes CEO. But I think it's inherent that women learn to do that kind of reading of what their boss, one level up and sometimes two levels up. Because when you make your boss look good, they remember it, and they will. It's more likely you could ride their coattails. So I do think that a focus on organizational strategy, organizational initiatives that are being pushed can serve women extremely well. Yes, we need to look at their personality. We need to look at a lot of different things, but I don't think that we're looking enough at their organizational business goals.
Okay, so let's think about this. So we were talking about corporate and females being able to operate and be effective in those particular areas and the path that they take. But let's talk about in what you've even experienced. I have an entrepreneurial situation. I don't have executive teams, right? It's me. I'm the leader of the organization. And maybe even a solopreneur. So when you start taking this data and you start being able to apply these insights, to those types of ladies, what would you glean from that?
Well, I would say that a solo person or a small business person is literally juggling most of these mindsets all the time. I mean, when it's the end of the month and you have to pay bills, you're going to focus on different items than when you just saw 5 people walk in a retail shop door. I think that we have to recognize first that we can do all of those. It is not like I have a genetic predisposition just to one of them. I can develop them all. So I think that's, an important part of it. But I also think there is, and I will admit, I had this. I had an imposter syndrome. I just thought that everybody else was brighter or smarter, and I just didn't have their background. And I think that if I wait until I could prove that I could be the sales VP, I'll never get there. Proficiency, expertise, accomplishments come from practice. But if I'm holding myself back saying, oh, I can't be in sales, I mean, that closes off a whole route for me. So I think that women in particular have to realize they don't have to be the perfect match. They don't have to have checked all the boxes to get a promotion. I think that one of the things I would encourage, women to do is to have more conversations about their career path, and be able to articulate that they have aspirations beyond their current job. I've had my own business now for 38 years. And before that, I was in organizations. And I'm aware that certain people way back when couldn't get a job because the assumption was the woman could not travel because her family commitments at home. I mean, I think we've gone by that, but I think it wouldn't hurt women if they're willing to travel to be able to make that a clear statement when they are discussing their career goals. I would like women to be able to ask for shadowing opportunities. Can I have a day off once a week for this month to shadow somebody so I can learn what another opportunity is? And I will tell you that the best thing I ever did when I was working for county government at the time, I wasn't in private sector. I found somebody who I admired, and I walked up to him and asked him, would you be my mentor? I didn't wait for a formal mentoring program. And I was getting ready to make a proposal to the VP of HR. And I was so thrilled when my mentor told me that the proposal I was making was the exact opposite of what he had proposed to become the vice president of human resources. And that little tidbit of knowledge helped me quite a bit. And I think that if I wait for someone to approach me, I may wait too long. But I also, when I asked him to be a mentor, I asked specifically, I would like to spend an hour a month with you. And so it wasn't seen as a overly burdensome new commitment for my mentor. So I think that we can do a lot more. I think we need to learn the language and the vocabulary of maybe a line position. I think we need to have more exposure to it. There was one organization I worked with as a consultant where they let their mentees or proteges actually sit in the back of strategic planning sessions. I mean, if I'm a trusted employee, what can I observe knowing that I will maintain confidence, that I will not be interrupting the flow of thought? I mean, I think there are opportunities to expose women that women are not taking advantage of. And I think that they can accept the fact that a man who just got a promotion probably doesn't have the skill set all pat either.
Well, and even going back to, like you said, your 30 years of experience and referring to how do I get the opportunity to get in some type of, mentor mentee, relationship? How do I, gain other perspectives? That's exactly why we created Myrna's Army. I mean, a community, because having those discussions when you don't have anybody to go to are still needed.
Yes.
You got to do them because it will help you, kind of like what you were referring to, maybe get over that imposter syndrome. It'll help you maybe to validate something you were thinking about. It'll help maybe, through collective knowledge share, open up some thinking that you never had a pathway, to before. So those are critically and vital. So here's what I'd like to know is what inspired you to start your own business 30 plus years ago, and how does it align with the concept of cherish and conquer?
Well, I think that I started because I found that doing what had always been done got what we've always accomplished. And I saw opportunities, and I thought there was a way to share new perspectives that would be quicker in delivering results, because I think that the more I can say, even if I'm in a staff position right now, I actually said this was one of my pitches. I reduced the number of labor complaints, and I increased the number of winning in arbitration because of a program and some information I shared. I need to try to articulate not only what I can do, but what I have done. And again, there was a assumption in one of the organizations I worked with that the first thing I had to do was to identify my boss's car in the parking lot, make sure I got there early and left after him. And of course, those kinds of things are outdated and don't necessarily have anything to do with results. So I'm trying to stop the assumption. There was another career advice in that organization. Walk fast in the hallways, be seen in the hallways, always carrying paper and walking fast. And I think it worked for some people in that organization way back then. But there's nothing that says that a woman couldn't volunteer to be on a task force. And that way she becomes visible, she becomes known, people become more comfortable with her, and she's learning. She is getting into a new area, expanding her expertise, expanding her network. And yet, I understand that we're all so overworked that we may not want to take on a new task force temporary assignment. But I do think women need to look for those opportunities and make the assumption that they've accomplished so much in their life already that there's a lot more that they will accomplish. It isn't a matter of having 100%, being able to walk on water kind of thing. We have the skills and we can gain the knowledge. And I think that kind of confidence pays off.
Okay, so help me dial the back and get an understanding. So that was a huge decision 30 years ago for you to decide to go out on your own. So, you talked about knowing that you could do things, but what did you have a passion for? What was it so important to you that you said, you know what, I'm willing to take the risk. I'm going to go do it.
Well, I will say that I had performed a role within county government. It was a large county. And then I worked within an electronics manufacturer in that same role. And I had seen what I could accomplish. So I did have a track record in my mind that was doable. I had some experience in a family business, so I was aware of the uncomfortable parts of being starting your own firm, one of them being inconsistent cash flow. And so, if I had awareness of what entrepreneurship is, and I had some confidence that I had been able to accomplish actual tangible results that was recognized by the organization, for me, it was a risk, but it was not a mountain load of risk. It was something that was doable because I knew that there were issues that I would have to face, cash flow planning being one of them. In an organization, I probably had not written the request for a proposal as much as I had to do as in my own firm. So there were things that I knew I had to learn, but I guess I just knew that I had learned a lot already and was confident that I could learn the new skills. I mean, I'd never set up a chart of accounts before, but you could go to somebody and talk to them about how they set up their chart of accounts. I mean, I think women have a network of resources that if they ask for help, they will get it.
Most definitely. Okay, so can you share a moment when your passion for your business fueled your perseverance through tough times?
I think that in my experience, one of the problems was that when I had a big contract, I was so busy working on that contract, I wasn't doing as much marketing as I should have done. So when a contract ended, I might not have had the pipeline that I had wanted. And so for me, I had to set some parameters about keeping the marketing going even while I was delivering the work. And in one instance, I was given a contract for about 3 months. I'm not sure the exact timing. The contract lasted 1.5 years. And I worked a lot within my professional association and was able to keep my network up. But that had to be a conscious choice, because after working every day for a week, you might want to say, okay, I've earned the right to sit down and put my feet up. But I had to recognize what the cycle is and plan accordingly. And that wasn't fun. But
the last time we chatted, you had shared that, one of the things that you've had to do a better job of was essentially honing down your exploration. And what I mean by that is you like finding new ways of doing things. You like to be innovative and creative. And then sometimes it actually diverts you and takes you off task.
Correct.
How have you been able to manage that? And we know you never get back to perfection. It's always a struggle. So how do you manage that challenge?
I think it is by staying alert to all of the aspects of a business. But I will admit, I'm writing a new book right now. For the first time, I'm writing it as a fable. And while I'm writing, I find it very difficult to do some of the other aspects I need to pay attention to. It's almost like it's such an internal process writing that it's hard for me to do some of the external things. So I think I've gotten enough of a network now that it's not as critical if I focus for a long time in one area. I think I have the skills of the network now to be able to pick up that area that had floundered a bit and bring it back up pretty quickly. But I do think that when you love doing something, you do tend to want to do it well and to focus on it because it's the fun part. I mean, taxes to me, hideous. Balancing checkbooks, not fun, but I know I do them because I know what the cost would be if I, didn't do them. So it is setting an awareness level of the fact that I can have different priorities at different points in time, and I can switch as long as I keep monitoring the situation. I talked to you about my book, Situational Mindsets. I really want the mindset to be about the realities around me. It doesn't mean I don't want to look at, personal style or motivation or traits or any of that kind of thing, but I have to keep an eye on the business. And I don't know that women have always given themselves the opportunity to focus on the immediate need, the immediate crisis, and yet still stay alert to the wider world of opportunities that they could tap into.
So can you share a time and give an example of when you were staying true to your principles and that actually led to a significant achievement or breakthrough in your business?
I'm trying to, I think that I was working for a government agency that had a huge contract with a large defense contractor. And they were having an argument, a disagreement. They were threatening each other with termination. And I certainly knew who my client was. It was the governmental agency. But when I listened to the contractors' issues, I recognized that they were making some very good points. And so I chose to find a middle ground rather than completely support my client. And it was wonderful. Within, I think it was 6 hours, they came to a new agreement and everything was fine. It was, but I had to counter some of the points my current client was making. And I think that was staying true to my definition of myself as someone who is trying to advance business opportunities, but to do it in a way that is win-win, rather than using the power of my client. At that time was a large governmental agency, and they had many avenues which they could have pursued that would have led them to terminate the contract. So to me, it was a decision point of who am I and what is my role here? And it wasn't just to be someone who was going to support and echo every point my client made.
Okay, so can you share a story of a time when you've had to pivot or adapt your business strategy?
My personal business strategy we're talking about here.
Yes.
I think that I was enjoying working with private sector, nonprofit sector, as well as governmental agencies. And I had a contract that was so large that it triggered a Defense Department audit. And it is a very comprehensive, labor-intensive, detailed process. And I made a decision after that, because I would have to create actually 2 sets of books, because what the private sector determines is development is not necessarily what the public sector defines. And I was cleared of the Defense Department audit, got great reviews, but I was also told I had to set up 2 different accounting systems. And I made a decision to drop governmental business and just pursue the other businesses, because I didn't want to be spending that much time on accounting issues.
Which you already established you don't like
I
to do.
really don't. And you know what? There are people that like it and are willing to work with me. So, I would rather rely on my strengths.
I hear you. Oh, I love it.
It was a
now,
market limiting decision. And yet I'm still happy with it.
So how do you maintain a healthy work-life business as a woman? And what strategies have worked well for you?
I think that one of the strategies that has worked well for me is to see whatever is a budding opportunity and seize it. whether that I wrote an article for a peer-reviewed journal, which was an interesting process. But I want to stay focused on my growth, the expansion of my knowledge, the ability to help others achieve their goals. And I have to constantly tell myself that I have too many expectations of myself. So I have found that developing my to-do list kind of thing, I know I have to include more time for family or more time for personal growth or something like that. As I just got back from a trip to Chicago to visit my grandsons, you got to plan that in because otherwise you get on a treadmill and those treadmills can last a long time.
Most definitely.
Enjoying the show? After joining Marina's Army, subscribe and share the Cherish and Conquer podcast on your favorite platform. Thank you. Now, back to the show.
Okay, so now we got an opportunity to go through our speed round, which is our breakthrough blitz. Are you ready to help us break through?
I'm going to do my best.
Very good. Okay, so what's your favorite productivity tool or app?
I'm afraid I'm going to say accounting records, sales, kinds of metrics.
Yeah, because it reduces burden for you. That makes sense. Okay, so what's your favorite way to unwind after a busy day?
Gardening is a great love of mine. Reading non-business books and travel and the theater. I like live performances.
If you could have dinner with any female business leader, living or deceased, who would it be?
I'm afraid I'm blanking on her name, but she was the former head of Girl Scouts, and she's written books, and she reorganized the Girl Scouts. So I think if I was talking in terms of volunteer professional organizations, her name begins with an H, and I'm sorry, but I can't recall it at this moment. It would be her.
That's okay.
I think that there are some women who I know who have started businesses and grown them, and it would be fun to have a dinner conversation with them to find out as they look back, what they would do differently. I love asking that question of people. I think that we focus so much on success stories that we don't always ask the questions of what did they learn and what would they do differently. So that would be sort of fun. I mean, Madeleine Albright would be somebody she accomplished so much as a Secretary of State. There are, obviously a lot of women who have been successful too, but I think that women who've handled the complexity of so many competing demands would be the people I would really seek out.
So what's your favorite quote or mantra that keeps you motivated?
Leadership is about getting other people to do what you want them to do, thinking that they want to do it. I think it's an Eisenhower quote.
What is one piece of advice that you would give to aspiring female entrepreneurs?
Ask for time with other people who have succeeded, to ask them about their successes, ask what they would do differently now that they look back at their career. What lessons did they learn that they now think they need to change?
Okay, this is my last breakthrough blitz question, Mary. What's the biggest misconception people have about being a female entrepreneur, and how do you address it in your own experience?
I think the biggest misrepresentation or assumption that people make is that women are people pleasers and that they are not about results. And so having the vocabulary of results and having the examples and being willing to share them is something that I think is a good way to establish your credibility. I really think that I've been helped by having advanced degrees. I also have been helped because I think I made a very concentrated effort to learn the business realities of my different clients. And I laugh because whatever client I go to, they tell me that they are unique and they're not like any other organization ever. And of course, there is a unique aspect, but there are some common pitfalls that organizations fall into. And I think that, decision-making, examples are plentiful of, bad decisions, whether it's new Coke or some of the high-tech initiatives that never took off. We really need to do a better job of listening to different perspectives and avoiding those kinds of massive pitfalls.
Mary Lippitt, thank you for sharing your wealth of knowledge. How do our listeners and watchers get in touch with you?
They can reach me at enterprisemgt.com. Mary Lippitt or M. Lippitt at Enterprise, ENTERPRISE, MGT.com. And in October, I will be publishing my new book, Leadership, Saving the Herd. It's a fable about executing complex change.
Mary Lippitt, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Thanks for tuning into the Cherish and Conquer podcast from Marina. Join our community of trailblazing women at community.marina.ai and get access to exclusive resources, checklists, and guides. If you found value in today's episode, please rate, review, subscribe, and share it across your social platforms. See you soon, and remember, barriers are for breaking.